I never liked watching myself reflected in screens. Too easy to notice the slant in one shoulder, the way my mouth hesitates before it moves. I tapped the video icon without much thought, meaning to ask about an old climbing pullover, the one with the faded blue stripe. It wasn't in the drawer where I'd left it. I thought maybe it ended up at the house. When the screen blinked to life, I saw the soft flicker of candles before I saw his face. There was a long table behind him, linen-draped place cards, napkins folded into neat triangles. Elaine lifted a glass and nodded to someone off-screen. Rachel leaned forward to pour wine, smiling like she'd done it 1,000 times. Her blouse was the kind Elaine used to call presentable. I didn't hear my name. I think this feels right now, David said, not looking at the camera. Elaine smoothed her hand over the tablecloth like she owned it. The family feels lighter. I tilted the phone slightly enough to see the place cards lined in gold ink. None said, Julia. I ended the call. The screen returned to my reflection, faint under hospital lighting. The neckline of my t-shirt had stretched slightly from where the fabric paled from too many industrial washes. A tiny smudge of applesauce stained my sleeve. I turned the phone over and placed it face down on the tray. My thumb traced the chipped edge of the plastic. No one had lied. No one had yelled. They'd simply gathered. Without me. A nurse passed in the hallway humming something tuneless, and the sound reminded me of wind caught between rocks there, but unreachable. I looked at the call log. It hadn't even lasted 3 minutes. Long enough. A voice in my head, it used to sound like Rachel once told me, "You're overthinking things again." This time it didn't speak. I reached for the blanket and pulled it up, not because I was cold, but because I wanted to. Let the silence stay. Let it stretch. Let it mean something. I didn't cry. I just lay there still listening to the soft, mechanical breath of the room, and chose not to call back. I used to believe that if I moved gently enough, nothing would break. After the accident, I thanked him for everything, for the cup of tea that came lukewarm, for the pillow fluffed just a little too high. I learned to smile at half effort to say this helps when it didn't. He once left a spoon on the tray beside my lunch, slightly sticky with honey. I wiped it clean with a napkin and said nothing. When Elaine brought up the idea of long-term care, I didn't ask why. I nodded and folded my hands. If it makes things easier, I said. She exhaled like I'd passed a test. It's not about giving up, dear. It's about facing reality. I didn't remind her that reality used to include me at the summit of Rainer with frost in my lashes. I just adjusted the blanket and kept my breathing steady. Rachel came by with store-bought muffins once a week, always in a different scent, lemon poppy, blueberry, chocolate chip. I never told her I couldn't taste most of them. How's work? She listed clients I no longer knew and meetings I would never attend. That's great, I replied, nodding like a spectator. I sent Elaine a birthday card in late March. White envelope, blue ink. I wrote, "Wishing you peace and comfort this year. Nothing more." She didn't reply. I didn't expect her to. One morning, while David packed for a conference in Denver, I slipped a note into the outer pocket of his bag. "Live the life you need. I'll be all right." He never mentioned it. Neither did I. The whiteboard in my room still held the words, Tuesday, PT at 10 from 2 weeks before. No one had erased it. I stared at it each morning as if effort had a shape. I never asked why I wasn't enough. Instead, I folded laundry with one good hand and whispered small encouragements to myself under my breath. If I spoke softly, If I held still, if I didn't become a burden, maybe I would stay in the picture. I pressed the ring deeper into the drawer once beneath a tangle of socks and receipts, not to hide it, but to see if anyone would notice it missing. No one did. And maybe that was the moment I stopped trying to be remembered and started measuring silence in hours instead of days. I don't think people mean to erase you. They just keep turning the page and you're the sentence that got cut in layout. The day I lay flat under the therapy lights, counting the quiet ticks of the wall clock, I remembered the message thread from that spring. Congratulations, Rachel. We're all so proud of you. Streamers emojis, exclamation marks, 12 replies. No one noticed mine had come a month earlier after my program won national recognition. David had texted back. That's great news, Jules. 4 words. No punctuation. At the wedding, Elaine stood beside me in her taupe dress, gripping a champagne flute like it was a gavel. She leaned toward her sister and murmured, Rachel fits so naturally, like she's always belonged here. I had been standing less than a foot away. My shoes were the wrong shade of beige. I remember because I spent the night staring at them. When I organized the adaptive climbing weekend rope skier, volunteers, 2 months of grant applications, I sent the article to the family group chat. No response. 2 weeks later, Rachel appeared on the local morning show, petting a cat in a volunteer vest. Elaine clipped the segment and mailed it to the whole family. Public service looks good on her, she'd written in looping cursive. David once found me curled on the floor after I'd tried to reach the bathroom alone. He wiped my face with a damp cloth and helped me back to the bed. Don't push yourself. You've already done enough for what I never asked. I nodded. I folded my fingers tight against each other so they wouldn't shake. No one remembered that I hated lilies. I received them anyway, white and scentless, with store-brand cards. Thinking of you. No name at the bottom. One night, while trying to hold a pen, I traced the shape of my own initials over and over on a napkin. They didn't look familiar anymore. They looked like someone else's signature, like a name being rehearsed by a stranger. The next morning, I found the napkin folded neatly in the trash. Someone had thrown it out while clearing the tray. I didn't take it back. There's a silence that comes when you realize you're not being punished, just omitted. I used to think that nothing truly final came without ceremony. The folder arrived tucked under Rachel's arm, along with a box labeled Misk. Julia. The handwriting wasn't hers, just a few things from the old place. Thought you might want them. She didn't sit down. Her eyes flicked toward the clock as if counting favors. Inside the box, a single glove-won ceramic mug with a chipped rim, a scarf I hadn't worn in years. The photo album was missing. So was the ring. She placed the folder on the side table. David said you should have a look. No rush. Then, as if reading from a line rehearsed, it's not personal. It's just easier this way. When the door clicked shut behind her, I waited a moment before touching the folder. The paper smelled of copier, ink, and Stahl envelope glue. Page 2 held my name, then struck through in red. Under legal guardian of financial interest, Elaine's name appeared in block type, a signature below it. Her handwriting looked like it always had neat, tight, unapologetic. One line in smaller print subject determined to lack executive capacity for independent decision-making. Reviewed and approved. I didn't remember anyone reviewing anything. The next page listed David's name alone under property holdings. Joint had become singular. I turned the paper over, then turned it back again like the shape of the sentence might change if I looked long enough. Later, when he called, I mentioned it. It's just a precaution. I didn't want you to feel overwhelmed. There was no space in that sentence for me to stand. I asked, "Who decided I couldn't make decisions?" He paused. "Your care team." Elaine signed off. It was unanimous. I pressed my thumb to the corner of the folder, feeling the sharpness of the paper. He added, "It's better for everyone this way." I didn't answer. I placed the mug from the box on the windowsill, the chip facing out. The glove stayed in the cardboard fingers, curled inward like they still held something. I folded the folder slowly, corner to corner, like it might tear if I moved too fast. Then I pushed it along with the box toward the door, not as a gesture, not as protest, only because it no longer belonged in the room with me. Names can be erased more quietly than voices. Ethan adjusted the therapy bar and looked over the chart. "Do you want us to update anyone about your progress? I didn't look up. There's no one waiting to hear." The file stayed closed on the edge of the cabinet. No one followed up. I asked to keep my passport. It had been sitting at the front desk with my intake documents for months. "It's outdated," Valerie said, handing it over. I slid it beneath my pillow that night, like something sacred. Later, I borrowed a pen and practiced writing again. The right hand still hesitated, so I used the left. I wrote Carter in block letters, then crossed through it once. Slowly. Then wrote Julia C. in smaller print. Valerie passed by, glanced at the page. "You're still married, technically." She walked away before I replied. I didn't tear the paper. I folded it twice and placed it under the water pitcher. Not hidden, not displayed. When Ethan mentioned clearance for walking unassisted 10 feet, I waited for the second sentence, the one that always came next. "You're strong. You're getting close." This time I asked, "If I can walk up one flight of stairs, can I leave?" He studied me for a long time. "It's not about can or can't. It's yours to decide." That night, I looked up local listings. I didn't need space. I needed a lock. A second-story walk-up with windows that faced east. No elevator. 1 bathroom. Deposit required. I didn't tell anyone when I sent the deposit. I didn't pack. I didn't ask for help measuring doorways or ordering support bars. Ethan caught me looking out the window during our session. "You've been quiet." I nodded. Rachel hadn't messaged in weeks. Elaine sent a group email about the garden fundraiser. My name wasn't CC'd. I didn't reply to either silence. Before bed, I folded the corners of my blanket the way nurses used to do, triangle in palm pressed flat. Not for comfort. Just to remember my hands could still do something without permission. There were no announcements, no goodbyes. Just a calendar with a circle on it drawn in pencil, no label, and a decision I had already made not to wait for anyone to tell me I could leave. I used to think stillness meant failure. Now I know it just means no one is watching. The building smelled faintly of boiled cabbage and old paint. The stairs creaked whether I stepped softly or not. My unit was at the end of the hall next to the mailboxes. No one had opened in days. There was a single overhead bulb outside my door, always flickering like it couldn't decide if I deserved light. I never called the landlord. I didn't want it fixed. Inside the walls were bare, beige not by design but by default. I bought a tension rod for the shower and assembled it myself, piece by piece, sitting on the floor. It took an hour. I didn't mind. The windows didn't lock properly. I wedged a wooden spoon in the sill. It worked well enough. Each morning, I brewed coffee with my left hand and poured slowly to avoid spilling. The mug I used had a crack down the handle. I held it anyway. It was light enough. The window in the kitchen faced east. The light didn't last long, maybe 40 minutes if the sky stayed clear. I made a habit of sitting through all 40. I started keeping a notebook beside the sink, 1 line per day. Not about dreams, not about anyone. Just what I could feel. April 4th. Toes curl slightly with effort. April 5th. Lower back, stiff, no pain. April 6th. Right thumb moved without command. I didn't share the notebook. I didn't name it. Ethan dropped by once with a small bag of groceries and a loaf of bread wrapped in brown paper. I was on the floor folding newspaper to level the nightstand. He didn't ask what I was doing. He passed me the corner of the pillow that had slipped. After he left, I unfolded the newspaper and used it anyway. I hung one photo above the light switch, Mount Hood taken the year before the fall. I stood off-center in it, hair blurred by motion. There had been no posing, no countdown. Just a moment caught without asking. That night, I tucked the ring into a jar of dry rice and screwed the lid shut. Not to protect it, just to keep it quiet. I didn't label the jar. Nothing in the apartment had a label. And for the first time, I didn't either. I never realized how often people only remember you when a signature is missing. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, with a return address I didn't recognize at first. Inside was a notarized packet, already flagged with a neon tab, where my name still existed. There was no note in David's handwriting, just a typed letter on soft paper. As we finalize the estate for David's grandfather, your legal inclusion in the family record is creating delays. We would appreciate your cooperation in removing the administrative burden. Elaine's name was at the bottom. The signature looked the same as the one under the medical waiver last winter. No, how are you? No mention of the accident. No mention of my name beyond its inconvenience. Tucked inside the flap was a smaller folded note in different ink. So glad to hear you're on your feet again. Everyone was surprised. No return address, just Rachel. I placed the packet on the counter beneath the fruit bowl where the bananas had already turned soft. I didn't touch it for 3 days. On the 4th, I saw the Carter family featured in a lifestyle article someone had left in the cafe near my apartment. The headline read, "A Portland Family's Quiet Strength." There was a photo. David standing beside Elaine on the porch of their old house. Rachel in the background holding a vase of flowers. The article described their perseverance through a loved one's health crisis. It didn't use my name. It didn't need to. "She's doing better now," Elaine was quoted, "and we're grateful to have supported her journey." I traced that sentence with my index finger until the paper smudged. They'd used the story, but not the body. Not the damp sheets. Not the bruised tailbone. Not the mornings I'd vomited from the pain of simply sitting upright. Only the parts that could be polished into narrative. I folded the article into fourths and tucked it behind the gas bill. I didn't call. I didn't sign. I looked at the place marked with the neon tab, the blank line waiting for my name. I thought about the weight of ink, how easily it can rewrite a person out of themselves. And then I set the pen down, cap still on. I don't wait for people to finish their sentences anymore. I've learned that the rest of the sentence is usually meant for them, not for me. The mornings begin with the hum of the washing machine and the sound of my left hand struggling with buttons. I've stopped buying shirts with cuffs. Elastic works fine. The laundry hangs on a foldable rack near the heater vent. I rotate each piece once, not because it matters, but because it reminds me I can reach. At the rehab center, 2 blocks from my building, I volunteer 3 times a week. They don't ask for my story, which is why I stay. I show new patients how to adjust the cane without leaning too hard. where to tape padding so the wrist doesn't blister. Just breathe through the weight. It gets quieter. Most of them don't believe me the first time. I don't blame them. I make lunch simple, half a sandwich fruit tea, no salt, no sugar. The body listens more when I give it less to argue with. In the mirror above the sink, I still tilt my head to the left, but not to soften the line of my jaw anymore. Only to see the part of me I once ignored. Ethan stopped by last week. He brought an orchid in a clay pot. I heard you've been walking the neighborhood. I didn't answer. I placed the pot on the windowsill, where the light used to hit my old calendar, the one with the mountains. I'd torn it down 2 weeks earlier when I realized none of those dates mattered anymore. Valerie sent a message through the hospital portal. Didn't expect to see your name on the advanced recovery list. Proved me wrong. I let the message sit unread for a day before archiving it. Marta called once, her voice softer than I remembered. You always knew how to stand even when you couldn't. I said, you were the first person who didn't flinch when I fell. That stayed with me. I don't tell people I'm better. I don't correct them when they say I was brave. I still fold towels unevenly. I still wince when rain shifts behind my knees. But I don't shrink anymore when I walk into a room. They left one version of me behind. I didn't bring her back. I built someone else. Some endings don't need closure, just an address to return what was never really yours. I printed the documents again, even though the originals were still folded under a stack of utility bills. The new ones came out slightly off-center, as if the paper itself hesitated to align. I didn't rush. I boiled water, measured loose leaves into a ceramic infuser, and watched steam curl along the chipped tile. I poured a cup, left it untouched. Let it cool the way I've learned to let silence do its work. The document sat on the kitchen table, 2 pages with dense print and a blank line for my name. The instructions were clear. Sign, seal, return. I took a red marker from the drawer, thick permanent, the kind teachers use when they stop pretending a student will improve. I drew a single line through the signature space, then another. Not angry, not sharp, just deliberate. On the back, I wrote in small, even letters, I no longer belong to the version of your family that required my silence in order to keep me. I folded it twice. No envelope, just a rubber band and a mailing label addressed to the firm that had handled Elaine's estate requests. I didn't include a return address. The post office was quiet that afternoon. I stood in line behind a woman mailing baby shower invites. I held the folded packet like it weighed nothing. When it was my turn, I slid it across the counter without a word. The clerk stamped it and didn't look up. On the way out, I passed the lost and found tray near the exit, a shallow bin with scarves, gloves, 2 sets of keys. I reached into my coat pocket and took out the ring. It was lighter than I remembered. I placed it inside on top of a plastic badge someone must have dropped months ago. Then tore a scrap from my notebook and wrote, "This wasn't lost. I left it here on purpose. I didn't wait for anyone to notice. No one needed to." The door clicked softly behind me as I left. I didn't look back. I don't keep copies of the papers I never signed. That absence is enough. I no longer measure the day by how much I complete, but by how little I resist. The floor is still cold beneath my feet, and I don't mind it anymore. Cold is honest. It doesn't pretend to welcome or reject. I sat up without counting. 3 steps to the kitchen, not graceful, not fast, but mine. The kettle is dented where it once fell from the counter. It still works. So do I. The postcard sits in the drawer beneath the utensils, Angel's Landing, red cliffs, washed in late sun. I took it years ago, back when I thought you had to conquer something to prove you'd touched it. Now I place it on the shelf above the sink. Not to display, just to keep. The water begins to hum. I don't rush it. I hold the mug with both hands, the chipped side turned toward the window. There's no wind, only the faint sound of birds adjusting to the light. The cane rests by the door, leaning as if it knows it's not needed just yet. The shirt I wear is soft at the seams. A small thread has unraveled near the hem. I didn't stitch it back. Some things don't need mending to remain whole. There are no messages blinking, no meetings, no paperwork. The silence is intact, and I let it stay. Someone once told me, you always looked like you were waiting for someone to give you permission. I don't wait anymore. I still forget to salt the oatmeal. I still overfill the teacup sometimes. The table wobbles slightly on the right leg. I don't fix it. A beam of sun cuts through the curtain. I let it fall across the floor, uneven and perfect. No one will ask how far I've come. No one will write a headline. There won't be a return to before. And that's not the point. I am here. I am drinking tea in a room I chose with a body I carry gently without apology. I don't whisper anyone's name. I don't wait for the phone. I don't fold memories into something smaller to make them easier to hold. I watch the steam rise from the cup. It curls, then vanishes. I don't chase it. Enough, I think. Not as proof, just as presence.